Alrighty, greetings everybody. Here we are. We're live. We have the usual cast of characters here from Mr. People's Pet Shop for the Sunday morning, Sunday afternoon, Sunday broadcast. We'll call it whatever. Since Stephen Avery and Brendan Dassey supporters are all around the world, you can't really pin it down to any one time of day, right? Anyways, so how are you guys doing? How you doing, Roel?
Doing fine, thanks.
How you doing there, Magilla?
Well, I got to get out of my window, so I'm doing good.
Uh-oh.
Some echo here.
Somebody's got to mute their YouTube window.
Just done it.
So how you doing there, Magilla? Sorry.
I'm good. Am I clear?
Okay, yeah, now there we go. And Mr. Capaldi, how you doing there?
Yeah, apologies for that.
You got the
I've got my laptop in front of me. I've got my phone, and of course the phone started playing up with the audio. So apologies for that, because everybody wonders what the hell happened there, you know?
Yeah. See, I'm glad it just doesn't happen to me sometimes where I forget, folks. So it's good to see it happen to others, you know, especially the Mad Scott, because he likes to take the piss so much. It's good
Not
to have reason
Not at all.
to take the piss, you know, with him every once in a while. So anyway. So how's everybody doing? Let's see who we got over here in chat.
I got a replay echo.
Okay, let's see.
Yeah.
Anybody in the chat hearing an echo? I'm not getting one myself. Oh wait, I did hear one there. Very loud.
Very faint.
I think it was Paul.
So
Speak, Paul.
No, honestly, mine's muted. Mine is completely muted now.
I just heard myself echo.
Yep.
Yeah, somebody's echoing. Yeah, I do have. Well, here, let me do this. I mean, I have it open on YouTube, but it is muted. But let me go ahead and close the window. I still hear it, so it's got to be somewhere else. Is everybody wearing headphones? Yeah, Roel is. Paul is. Are you using headphones there, Magilla?
Yeah.
You are. Okay, so where does that echo come?
Did you kill it?
I killed one window. Maybe I still had one open. Could be me. Sorry.
Okay. No worries. Okay.
Is it gone now?
It's gone now. I don't hear it now.
All right.
Yeah, it's gone.
That's it.
All right.
Okay.
So moving on.
Hopefully we
All right,
didn't lose our
let's
audience.
say hi to everybody in the chat real quick before we get started, obviously. For everybody showing up here, obviously, to hear all this good information that we're going to have for you. We got Don Ethan. We got Scooby. How you doing, Scooby? We got Ripper. For you guys know, with the Highland community college situation over there, that civil rights kind of issue going on over there. We got Mystical Jinx. Hey, what's up, Jinxie? Justin Marine. Super Mario Maker 2 Glitch Makers. How you doing? Sapper Cop. How you doing? Carl Mann, sorry. Dark Side of the Moon, how you doing? The 1965 Beans, how you doing? Linda K, how you doing? Marjan Schumann, Tracy Bowman, how you guys all doing? Wigaholic, sharing is caring. Michelle Smith, and so hey everybody, welcome. How you doing? Great to be here. So obviously we're going to have some more stuff today. We're going to be going back into Loof to begin with. I know a lot of people find it interesting. I happen to find it very interesting, particularly, you know, some aspects maybe more than others, but there's some aspects that I find very interesting, and I just love the kind of the depth that you went into to find outside information, Magilla, to inform, you know, your conversation or your argument. And I just think it's very interesting. Most interesting thing that stands out to me about what you presented initially about Loof was just how the appearance of that track that was suddenly there on the 8th, that like didn't seem to be there on the 7th because nobody noticed it, but suddenly it was there so strong on the 8th that 2 dogs ended up following it. And it led over to that little spot that would come up behind Steven's trailer, which I find fascinating.
Okay, so what happened to the materials? I'm just seeing a a Google search page.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, you need to show Twitter.
It got clicked over. Sorry.
Yeah. I was also going to add that you've got Mr. Texas 2 Counties and even Captain Crunch in the chat there. So
Sorry. Yeah, Travis
everybody-
Williamson was in there. Yep. Sorry.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Texas 2 counties. Yeah.
And of course, we have a dog in the chat.
Yes.
I did mention Scooby.
Okay.
Kim Eastwood there.
Could we just scroll to where this map is fully visible?
We sure could.
Okay, so a lot has happened this week. We had some new findings. We had a lead come in that I think it actually came in late last week. It was in our show that Ryan's sister's husband's family owned a 1977 Jeep CJ5. This week we did get a satellite photo of that CJ5, which confirms that it was white, which was really interesting. We also, after last week's show, I was sent a lead through direct messaging that showed me that there was a dispatch call coming in on the 4th of November that said that a person had seen the RAV4 and verified his license plate the morning of November 4th, and the location was on Highway 15 just west of Appleton. That happens to fall between Hilbert and Shiocton, which is where Ryan's sister lives. So that was a pretty big thing. Another thing that came in was another FOIA request got us photographs of the county quarry. And the county quarry, we got to see what the burn piles looked like for the first time. I think that came in a PDF file. I know there's a Reddit post of a couple of the photos, but there's a PDF file that's much better.
Right.
For me, there were a couple surprising things in that. The county quarry pile was actually 2 big mounds. They were like 3 feet tall off the ground and fairly wide. One was a little bigger than the other. And they got broken into a lot of evidence tags because they wouldn't all fit within the buckets they were using. So I think a lot of us thought that those evidence tags were more scattered around the quarry. That's not the case. There were 2 big mounds. Looking at the materials of the mound, it was clear there was some fire ash in them, but they were predominantly made of mud. And also, they were not in holes or hiding holes. So it was dumped in that area, and none of them were consistent with a burn site. So that all came in new. Also, Roel did an analysis of the 7 loci DNA, looking at the literature and determining that the alleles that were seen there all were either all or nothing. And he found out that 4 profiles that include allele dropouts, that's very suspicious. That there should be some alleles that are one of the 2 dropped out, and there were none, and a fairly large number of double dropouts without any single dropouts. So his analysis, and there was also some really good responses to his post. It's on Reddit, but I think there's some Twitter links to get you into it. So we're going to be going through a lot today. Unfortunately, I think there was too much news this week, so we were thinking.
Yeah, you're forgetting the walkthrough video, which was also very.
Oh, that's right. We got
we
got the earliest walkthrough video we had. So we had the 11/12 video, which was like when they freed the site. But we got a video that was taken on the 6th of November, and it showed there were a lot of leads in it too. I I don't think I have any in the presentation. One really interesting one was there was a set of binoculars on the counter in the Dassey kitchen. So maybe Bobby was doing a little bit more than just looking out the window. There were a lot of good findings in that. So as strange as it is, we're at a moment when the case seems to be moving pretty fast, even though it's been going on for what seems like forever. So
what I found the video shocking because they had a warrant to search for DNA, and what they do the next day, they with their bare hands they touch everything there in the trailer. They don't wear gloves or anything. I can't understand that.
Well,
very sloppy.
I think the level of criminal evidence collection in this case was very eye-opening and not in a good way.
Yeah, and it kind of goes back to a point that I like to make a lot is why would you not follow SOP or standard operating procedure if you're a police officer? Because what does standard operating procedure do for you as a police officer? Well, it creates a set of rules that if you follow them, you can basically do no wrong. Basically, the only way to do wrong is to venture outside of those standard operating procedures and to do things outside of them. That's when you can potentially run into trouble. So it makes no sense to me that we have a case full of situations that kind of go outside of standard operating procedure, and it's all supposed to be harmless and innocent and no problem here, nothing to see here. So it's one of the big things about this case, really, for me too.
Okay, so I'll try to get back on the main talk.
Right. Sorry. Go ahead.
Okay, so one of the things that happened is I've been sort of heads down and obsessed investigating with a group of other people who've been mainly private messaging me. The case of Ryan Did It, and we've had some really good leads and breaks. And I'm actually at a point where Ryan is clearly my prime suspect. And I started debating with some people on Twitter mainly, a little bit on Reddit, and in private messaging, and people are not ready to hear that message at all. And I really broke it down with a couple people, and the big difference between where my mind is at and where their mind is at is they don't see the weight and importance of the dog track evidence. So I just, before we got into this talk, because this talk is going to go way beyond the dog track evidence.
Right.
But I just wanted to go back and say, I believe this evidence strongly, and it strongly implicates people living in Teresa's house. If you don't understand that yet, you're not ready to hear the rest of it. So let's just stay here.
Okay.
So on this slide, I've updated this slide. There was an earlier version to my latest timetable for when the tracks were. But let's go through the story. I mean, the first one really to show us this slide was Zellner and Making a Murderer. We didn't have access to the full scent dog tracks until, I don't know, 4 months ago. I can't remember when it came out. It was 23 images on Imgur. But we all saw this on Making a Murderer, and it obviously seems very important to Zellner. She made it a focal point of a lot of her presentations in Making a Murderer. Now, looking at this, it all seems sort of random. She had them like draw the lines. You know, this is really an animation. But when I saw the dog tracks, I immediately saw in it the theory of the defense. And I've labeled them here. So this one on top is they're coming from Cuss Road to Stevens' house and back. from the Cuss Road cul-de-sac. Well, that
Mhm.
sounds just like the defense theory of the lights behind Stephen's house on the 3rd of November.
Mhm.
And then I saw this track. We'll just go top to bottom. That'll be easier. That comes from the Redont Quarry and goes, and there's a scent pool behind the berm that has a view of Stephen's burn pit. And then there's actually on Officer Fauski's drawing, there's a big arrow attacking the burn pit from that berm that I didn't draw. It was drawn by the scent dog handler without knowing anything about the case. And that looked immediately to me like bone planting.
Yeah.
I looked at track 1. So the first thing they did was they brought Loof to the position of the RAV4. And track 1, she jumped over the berm and went south. You can see she went into the woods, and then she went out the access road to the quarry that goes by Wilmer Siebert's house. And then she came back by a different trail. It's important to know that was a different trail. The trails cross, so when I investigated where the trails cross, there's a path inside the woods that's wide enough for a car. So
Talk about here,
no, it's point A. It's where they cross in the woods, right there.
right here.
Yeah. So that's actually a place a car could park. And then there's another path, an independent path of the one she came down on that leads back to the RAV4. So what I thought this was two people coming back from the RAV4 to a car parked in the woods to keep it hidden, and then leaving right by Wilmer's house. So that was the exit trail for what Wilmer said happened. They came in, they planted the RAV4, and then they left in the Jeep.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to understand these tracks start making sense when you think of all the things that happened, but they don't make sense. They only make sense if the tracks are tracking the perpetrators and not the victim. The victim wasn't doing these things. The victim didn't come to Cuss Road cul-de-sac and then go case out Stephen's house, and the victim didn't plant her own bones. And the victim didn't plant her RAV4. So this is very important evidence. These dog tracks are coherent with the story. That's important to itself.
Yeah.
Zellner knew that. That's why she's drawn it. It's a mystery to her at the time of making a murderer. And I decided to investigate that mystery.
Yeah, she says something like, "What was she doing there in those woods and in the quarry? What was Teresa doing there? She didn't understand what you know now.
Right.
That
so
these tracks are not Teresa itself."
Well, that's my strong belief, and I might. There's some people out there that have heard me talk about this and think it's interesting, but they don't strongly believe in the evidence. So I want to go through that a little bit before I go further. My next step was to research this in the literature. Now, when I went to the literature on scent dogs, there's two types of literature. There's literature, there's academic literature, a very small amount. What I found was the academic papers had very little information. The only thing I found in common is they always insulted the dog handlers as being bumpkins or whatever. And they really didn't have that much knowledge, and they had no direct knowledge of working with dogs on trails. The other type of thing I found were books that were trying to teach handlers how to train bloodhounds and other scent dogs. And there's a lot of those. Some of them are endorsed by organizations, worldwide standards organizations for creating police dogs. And some of them are training military dogs. And I found out that the research and development of this technology for the military and the police, for the military, it dates back hundreds of years, and for the police, I think it does also. Even the development of the breeds of dogs I think the bloodhound was developed 500 years ago purposely just to track people. So, and after doing that and reading a lot of books, I discovered a book that talked a lot about it. There was an article, a chapter called Contaminated Scent Articles. Contaminated scent articles, it was telling you how to pick out a scent article in someone's home to make sure that it only has the scent of the person you want to follow and hasn't been contaminated by the scents of other people in the house. And that book really was my first big break to understanding what was going on here. The book explained clearly that the scent article is the contract between the dog handler and the scent dog. The scent article is what the dog's going to follow. It knows no other instruction. And scent dogs are not trained to distinguish between animals and human scent. That's human remains dogs are. Scent dogs are trained to find the scent of the things on their scent object. So the scent object was contaminated, and that contamination was what was causing it to follow someone else on all these trails. I also found out that the trails are laid down with high fidelity, that even these small loops in these trails are important. They are not, depending on the quality of the dog and what orientation it has, it can be a dog that gives you a poor trail, or it can be a dog that gives you a high fidelity trail. And Loof gives high fidelity trails. She was a nose down scent tracker and very experienced and well trained. The other dog, Raz, we can see from its report that it was not. But Loof's trails are high fidelity, which means that ignoring even small portions of them is a mistake.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Now, finally, I know we're spending an awful lot of time here. Finally, I look for how the scent article gets contaminated. And I found there are 3 ways it could get contaminated. The real important thing is that the killer and the scent article are carrying a common scent. Well, the scent article definitely had Teresa's scent, but the killer could have also had Teresa's scent. But it's important to know that scent is not long-lived, especially on human beings who change their clothes and wash. So for the killer to be laying down scent days afterward, the killer had to be replenishing the scent of Teresa on themselves. Now, there were 2 people living in Teresa's house, Scott and Ryan, and one of those people had actually moved into Teresa's living space. So Ryan had a separate area in the house. He had his own apartment with its own couple rooms, and Teresa had the rest of the house, and they had a common area in the kitchen. And Teresa's scent was concentrated in her living space, not in Scott's living space. So it's important to know. Also, people walking through for a brief amount of time will contaminate the scent object a little. The main way of scent contamination by a person is through human skin shedding. And it happens over time. The longer you're there, the more you will contaminate it. So Scott was in the position to get contaminated with Teresa's scent repeatedly as he kept going back to her living space and working in it.
Right.
Scott and Ryan were both likely to have skin cell shedding on Teresa's shoes. I researched that, and they weren't picked up till the 7th of November. So they were in the house for 4 days after she was reported missing, and they were with Scott for a lot longer. However, they were likely in Teresa's living space. I don't think she went and kicked her shoes off in Scott's room. So the one who was in Teresa's living space was Ryan. Okay? So the third vector I found was actually, I found Ryan saying how much he loved Teresa's cat in an article on Madison.com. And he gave me the cat's name, Mila. He said something like it really comforted him to sit in her chair and be with her cat. So Mila, I've had lots of cats. and not universally do they all do this. They all rub you to lay their scent on you, but some love to rub up against your legs and feet when you're standing up. Some like to rub up against your face when you're sitting with them on your chest. But it's very common they put their scent on your legs and shoes, and it's very common that they put their scents on objects in the house.
Right.
So if the killer has the cat scent on it, the cat scent is part of the killer's scent. So there's 3 ways that Ryan is sharing scent with the scent article. The one way is the scent article has Teresa's scent because she wore the shoes, and Ryan has Teresa's scent by secondary transfer from her belongings in her living space. The second way is Ryan is shedding skin cells the whole time that he's living in Teresa's house, and dust is collecting everywhere. I have a really good illustration on Twitter for that. The third way is they're both getting rubbed by the cat. When Loof is given the scent article, Loof is asked to find a trail of the odors that aren't present at the start of the run. By these 3 mechanisms, Loof is tracking Ryan. I've heard a lot of people argue different things. I've gone and I've rebutted their arguments with material from the literature, but so it's possible it's Scott. It's super unlikely it's the search party or the hall box. They are not immersed in her scent. They aren't living in her house. Also, Ryan might have handled the shoes. He might have been the one that gave them to the police. All right, the other thing I want to make clear is if these tracks are being laid down because the killer has common scent with the scent articles that were in Teresa's house, this is highly, highly exculpating of Stephen and Bobby. Stephen is never anywhere near Teresa's house. Bobby is never anywhere near Teresa's house. The shoes aren't brought to the yard until the 7th of November when they've been pushed off of this property, and they are never near those scent articles. That's 1. Their scent is not on the scent article. 2, if the scent was Teresa's scent, the only explanation anyone's come up with is they might be carrying a souvenir of that night with them. But I found articles by Conrad Most that say carrying something in your pocket is not going to leave track scent for a dog. Even being suspended 2 feet above the trail by a pulley system will not leave track scent for the dog. Carrying Teresa in your arms above your waist would not leave her track scent for the dog. Dragging her would. Okay? So it's important. Also, we know that Bobby and Stephen walked all around this property on the 3rd and the 4th. Bobby and Mike were in that garage skinning a deer, until it was skun, I guess. And then Stephen visited that garage, and Stephen every day walks up the street to his mom's house and back. None of those things are lighting up that dog should track. So it's important to understand this. I don't think why am I so sure that all this evidence is pointing to Ryan? This is why. Now, once you know it's pointing to Ryan, looking deeper into Ryan makes a lot of sense. And that's what I've been doing since I made this discovery. I've been trying to share it with all you, so really hoping you'd help me look into Ryan. And a lot of people are now, I'll tell you that. But
the first thing you think when you hear about Ryan B, possible killer, is at first you think, well, he must have followed her to the quarry or whatever. And how would it make sense that Teresa makes it home and then somehow Teresa's body or bones are being brought back to to the yard, and that's what didn't make sense
Okay,
in the beginning to me. So maybe
thanks for queuing up the talk. All right, so let's go to the next slide.
okay.
So just before we crack on, just to sort of sum up,
Next
then
slider in the thread.
Yeah, the thread.
some truthers, I feel that they definitely want it to be Bobby Dassey because of because they say that Kathleen Zellner has already named Bobby and Scott, but of course in Kathleen Zellner's motion she doesn't name Bobby and Scott. It's Stephen Avery. Now, obviously, that's being a bit pedantic because, of course, it's Kathleen Zellner that's presenting the motion, isn't it? But it was actually it was Steve Avery that said, "I believe it was Bobby and Scott." So looking at what you've sort of presented so far, the dogs are tracking something to do with Teresa, and as you showed us through the trails, they're going everywhere, and that couldn't possibly be Teresa. So it must have been somebody who must have come into contact with Teresa, as you say, by staying at the house, coming into contact with the cat. So are we sort of saying, well, we need to look at if it wasn't Ryan, we're looking at other people who might have had that kind of access that Ryan had. The one that came up on the screen here was that, of course, you've got law enforcement investigators going to the house. Is there any chance that they might have picked up the scent of Teresa?
Once again, we've got law enforcement and people in and out of her house.
Mm-hmm.
We don't have them staying there for long periods of time.
No.
We have different law enforcement people.
Yeah.
The person who picked up the shoes put them in plastic bags immediately. Mm-hmm. So he had some touch DNA transferred, probably some scent transferred when he picked them up, if he was stupid enough to not do what you're supposed to do, which is wear plastic gloves or handle them with gauze. One of the things all the books say is that the scent handler should have been brought to help pick out the scent article, and she was not. She was trained to understand the problem with scent article collection. A queso.
Milbelly says in the chat that he has audio of that scent article collection, so that might be interesting to hear that.
Excellent. Well, that's right. I have gotten a few tips. It'd be good to get a lot of them. So the scent article collection is very interesting, but also very few one of them went with her, but very few law enforcement officers have opportunity to do this. They aren't just they're actually at work when they're on the property, and other officers are watching what they're doing to some extent. For them to be wandering off and carrying buckets of bones around, I will say, before we go too far, Zellner has identified 2 Denny suspects.
Yep.
Or maybe 3. I'm not sure what Taddick's standing is. I think she only made a Denny claim against Bobby because that's who she had more evidence. But Ryan was in the earlier filing, and she did not drop that filing. And she fully says she did not solve the case. And I want you to know that she's had a good portion of this research for 6 weeks now. And she hasn't filed anything since seeing this. And I don't know if she believes it or not yet. But I did get some response from Jerry Buting. And I think it's an important break.
Sure.
Okay, so we'll go to this slide.
Sorry, just one more question, just for clarification. When Ryan Hillegas goes and stays at Teresa's house, so he was actually staying not just in her sort of rooms, but like sleeping in her bed, all that kind of stuff.
Well, I'm pretty sure he wasn't sleeping with Scott in Scott's bed.
Well, I'm going to say,
So he might have been sleeping on her couch or on her bed. I don't know. Just for the sake of just everybody feeling more comfortable, we're going to assume he slept on her couch. But he's in her living space.
Yes.
Okay. And her scent is all over her living space. And I will guarantee you that Scott didn't think to do any cleaning since she disappeared, based on some emails we've all seen. So he is the one in her living space. He's definitely operating her laptop until it's taken away. They have another computer in the house that he's hacking on. Maybe it's in Scott's living space. I'm not sure.
Right.
I would love to know from somebody who was there, like Kelly, what was going on. I did consider Scott as a suspect to look into. And as we see, as I investigated Ryan, I simultaneously investigated Scott. I think the data sends to say Scott was purposely kept in the dark by Ryan.
Right.
Okay, so the first thing we're going to do in our timeline is we're going to go back to Avery Salvage Yard. The last time we think Teresa had a known position, which is 2:35 p.m. on Halloween. That's when Zellner's latest timeline puts her there. That's when Stephen calls, looks out the window, and hangs up before even letting the call connect, so it only shows up on his bill. If she leaves there at 2:35 p.m. and takes the route past Larrabee, which turns out to be the shortest route home, it would also be the shortest route to Green Bay. Would not be the shortest route if she had to return to Zipperers. But if she takes that route home, it's estimated it'll take 42 minutes. Also, this is a route she would be very familiar with. This is her driving on her path to her house. So she'd be in her trance state, knowing these roads real well. And I wouldn't be surprised if she didn't make up a little time versus what's estimated. This puts her arriving at home in her driveway at 3:17 p.m. After leaving Avery's. Okay? Let's go to the next slide. Okay, so let me read what I wrote just to make sure
Sure.
So she's going to arrive home, and in my working theory, she's going to open her cargo door to bring her equipment into the house. We've got her behind a RAV4 on her driveway, just as we suspect based on the blood spatter analysis. I think she's confronted by Ryan in her driveway. Something happens there. After 31 minutes, now hold on. Ryan is calling his voicemail and then calls his sister's house and speak to someone for 21 minutes. So let's pull up there's 3 images here. Let's just look at them briefly. So there's Teresa with her RAV4. So she's pulling up in her home driveway. Go on to the next one. So here's an excerpt of Ryan's phone. So in the morning, he's calling some people. The last one's 9:41. If Teresa's home at 3:17, the next activity Ryan has is at 3:48. And then at 3:50, it's showing him calling Chad Blahoviak, who is his brother-in-law. But that's the landline, so that's really his brother-in-law and sister's house. We don't know who he spoke to. And he called. So there's between that 3:17 ETA and him calling voicemail, there's a 31-minute gap. And I think that's his only opportunity to commit this crime. If what we have is Scott is at construction work. His quitting time is 4:30, and then he has to get home. So he gets home between 4:30 and 5. If Teresa was still at the house at 4:30 or 5, Scott would know about it because he would have gotten home and seen her, or at least seen that she had left some things there. I don't think she ever got in her house. She might have, and he cleaned up, though. If it's later than, if she's there all the way till 7:30, I mean, she's charging her phone. All sorts of evidence would be that she got home.
Right.
So I really think this is the window. It's from 3:17 to 3:48, 31 minutes. Okay, go to the next one. Okay, so I just want to remind you of this is, I think you can see a little bit the ladder in here. This is a frame from Zellner's recreation of the blood spatter. I don't think she's nailed it yet. I mean, she nailed recreating the blood spatter, but slowly hitting somebody in the head with a hammer is not an activity that's likely to happen under a lot of adrenaline. But that's about the distance they think she was from the back door. The back door is open. It's at the back of her car. She probably opened the back door to get things out of her cargo area, which she would do at home. Okay.
Right.
All right. So if you close this, we go on. Okay. So now she gets off the phone with whoever was at her sister's house. It's 3:55 p.m. Scott is expected to get off work at 4:30 and be home at 5. He isn't home now. But the first thing you want to do, he's got an emergency. He's got to get the crime scene cleaned up. He's got to put Teresa in the car and get it out of there before Scott gets home. This, I think, is his first thing that he has to do. He'd be in a hurry to clean up. So what he wants to do is leave the house so Scott won't think Teresa got home. Because if it happened in her driveway, Ryan lives in Hilbert. Scott wasn't home. That's bad for him. So if we look at his phone calls, around 6 o'clock, he receives some calls, but all of a sudden he calls Scott. He calls Scott at 7:37. And he's not with Scott, believe me, and Scott doesn't answer, but Scott calls him back shortly, 10 minutes later. So my theory is the reason he's calling Scott is because his heart's going 100 beats a second, and he wants to know if Scott saw anything suspicious of that house. So he's going to call back and see how Scott's doing. You know, he's going to put on the old, oh, just checking in on you, buddy. But really, he's calling back to that house to make sure Scott didn't see anything suspicious, and really to make sure Scott didn't contact the police. He would be scared to death until he knew Scott didn't. Scott calls him back at 7:47. They're on the phone for 5 minutes. So at 7:52, that's when he goes dark for 17 and a half hours. Okay,
Right.
so to me, this phone evidence, now people are saying I'm putting it in a frame. I'm examining it closely. What I'm seeing is he's calling his sister and brother-in-law's house. And then his sister calls back. He talks to them for 43 minutes. So that's very interesting. And then I think he didn't have a window to do it with Scott home where the evidence would be that she didn't get home. So I think Scott was still at work and he got the hell out of there with the body, and he called Scott back just to make sure that Scott wasn't thinking anything was suspicious. Okay?
Okay.
Yeah, it's circumstantial evidence, of course, but it's compelling to me, at least.
None of it's exculpating. Immediately. I mean, you might come up with a theory where some of it is, but given my working theory, I don't see anything conflicting with my working theory. All right, after his talk with Scott, he goes dark for 17 and a half hours. I think his number one goal is to get rid of the body. 17 and a half hours is about right for a cremation.
Yeah.
The 3.5, I mean, we've heard how long, we've been studying cremations on this case so much, it's unreal. That's about the right amount of time. During this time, he must stash the RAV4 away from Hilbert, because people in Hilbert will recognize it. He can't stay around Hilbert, and he has to possibly cremate Teresa. Also, he knows he got scratched, and during the fight, and her nails is going to have his DNA. So he's got to either burn her or probably put her at the bottom of a body of water.
Right.
Some people are arguing, you know, if she was killed over by Avery's, you know, the Twin Rivers right there, or Lake Michigan. Getting a body into Lake Michigan is not as easy as people think. For those of us that actually live near the lake, you're not going to just toss it in and have it sink. You're going to have to wade in 40-degree water out 500 feet and weigh it down. And by the time you get out, you're going to be dying of exposure. But
Right.
she is beautiful, and we love our lake here. Okay, so the big thing is that 17 and a half hours after looking at the phone log, I think that's the window for cremation. Okay, go on. Also, I've been fitting these puzzle pieces. Why isn't the cremation later? Let's talk a little bit about that, because one of the things I was solving this week is when was the cremation? If the cremation is 4 or 5 days later, he's got her corpse laying somewhere decomposing. Handling a decomposing corpse to cremate it would be absolutely disgusting.
Sure.
So the idea that he would do that is very absurd. Also, I don't believe he drove the body back anywhere near the salvage yard if the murder occurred at her house. So what did he drive back? I think he drove back the cremains in containers that wouldn't be suspicious to hold dirt. There's a lot of dirt in what's dumped there, so probably the cremains are disguised with dirt. He came back with dirt. He did not drive the body across town. Even I think he's very smart. He would have known not to do that, and he might have the nerve to do it, but I don't think that happened. I think she was cremated the closer to Shyachtun than anywhere else, and I think Ryan did it in a remote place that he was familiar with. So somewhere he camped or somewhere he knew. He didn't drive to a place he didn't know to do it. He had to go someplace he was pretty sure. His brother-in-law's family likes to do off-road Jeep trips. Off-road Jeep trips are on trails that are ideal for finding someplace remote where no one else can get to. Sometimes they even line the trails in a way that you need to have a really big tire Jeep just to get over them, so that they keep other people out.
To get off the beaten trail or the beaten path, so to speak.
But someplace he knows. He's not going to go to Xander Road where he's never been before. He's not going to go to the county quarry yet because he's never been there before. That's not his turf over there. And he wouldn't know it. And he needs to go somewhere he knows. Also, Shyachtun is more rural than Manitowoc, so it's a little more on the outskirts of Green Bay. And if you drive south or west from it, you're in very rural territory. So I don't know where he did it, but that's I've tried all the other theories of when the cremation was. I think it was his number one thing to do. Now the RAV4, I believe he probably stashed at Chad Blahoviak's parents' woods. They had woods next to their house. I think he might have asked, "You mind if I park this car here?" They say, "Fine. It's great. No one's going to see it, and the people who own the property know it's there." The Blahoviaks don't know Hilbert, and they don't know Teresa's family at all. Go on.
I have a couple people in the chat sent me basically a profile for Ryan Hill. Have you seen that?
Yeah, on Facebook.
Yeah.
I got to tell you, I got a team of people that are doing a lot of digging and sharing things with me, and we've been busy. We've been all over that. We've been all over all the Blahoviaks profiles.
Right.
It's a little creepy. I'm sorry.
No worries. I mean,
I don't mean them poorly, but I would be upset if someone's doing it to me. So,
well,
it's a crazy world we live in.
Mm-hmm.
You go to the next slide.
You aren't being dishonest about something, getting people to wonder. So,
yes, I'm not doing this to anyone I don't think was a murderer and don't have some reason to investigate too. Okay. So track 3. Let's pull up the map because the track is actually not showing. So you got to click on that.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah. Okay. So this is the one. See, track 3 is this is the one where they start Loof down at the I think at the what's it called, the maroon van, and what he does is he goes I think first to the garage, looks around the back of the house a little. Um, this is where the story about Bear I think gets started. Uh, Officer Fauski doesn't want to get near Bear with Loof. Now, Loof is a big, old female bloodhound who is extremely valuable. She's got unbelievable amount of training in her.
Mm-hmm.
And also, the books I hear are bloodhounds make terrible pets. And one of the books said that they put the B into bitch. So it's like, I'm not sure Loof would be so nice around Bear. And Officer Fauski knows how Loof behaves a lot better than we do. I know Loof's fine with kids. He's with kids all the time. But dog on dog, especially, those are big dogs, a shepherd and a bloodhound. So she doesn't want to go. She doesn't want to go near Bear. I think, and that's the only place I've seen in a report where any policeman said Bear was a problem.
No, Brutus's handler was suggesting the same thing.
Well, that's shepherd on shepherd. I'm saying there's a difference between not wanting dogs to get together, especially big dogs,
Mm-hmm.
and also when dogs are on chains and leashes. They're friendly to each other without chains and leashes. Chains and leashes heighten their anxiety.
Yeah.
All right, but I, gorillas don't like to be on chains either.
Yeah.
But this one, Loof goes up the side trail. I'm not sure which side of the property line she was on. There's that like dirt road on the other side of the property line, and she ends up in the cul-de-sac. And in this one, she gets stopped by. This is on the 7th, and we have crazy stuff going on in the cul-de-sac that I'm sure we're all familiar with.
Right.
Okay, so she gets stopped. So this trail, I believe, is the next one on the timeline. So let's close out. I believe this is the trail when the electronics get planted and Stephen's house gets broken in. Go back to what the words on that one.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, so I think that trail, it was one thing I want to say is scent dogs are trained to know the direction of the trail. But when the trail was followed out and back in the same area, the direction is usually the return leg. That'll be the direction of strongest scent because that's where they were last. So I think what happened was they started at the Cuss Road cul-de-sac, walked down to the house, and then walked back to the Cuss Road cul-de-sac, drove away in their car that was at Cuss Road.
Yeah.
Also,
certainly, yeah. Something going on at Cuss Road for sure.
Yeah. Well, this is one thing. I think there's 2 trips to Cuss Road.
Yeah.
This would explain why there is scent that Loof will track in the Cuss Road cul-de-sac because we have Ryan with track scent coming off of him. That's in common with the scent article in the Cuss Road cul-de-sac. I think this trip was planting the electronics in the burn barrel, at least going up to the south front door and maybe breaking in and steal things like the blood. Okay, the scent dog was never allowed in the house, so we don't know if there was track scent in the house. It's a shame she wasn't allowed in. When I'm reading about what a smart investigator can do with a bloodhound versus what even Serafowski did, it's amazingly sad that we didn't have a smart investigator. Just to give you a feeling, one of the things they can do is they can give a seat of a car as a scent article and find out where the driver went when they got out of the car. That's often how they start trails when they have an unknown subject. So they could have told us if that scent was inside that house. They probably would have blamed it on Stephen though, so it wouldn't have helped any. So, but All right, so this is happening on the 3rd. The reason I know this is happening on the 3rd because I think it's consistent with Stephen's report of the taillights behind his house.
Right. How you doing, Roel?
I'm doing fine.
Good. Mr. Capaldi, you still there?
I certainly am, and I'm
All
just sat back enjoying
checking
it.
in. Just checking in. Sorry.
Yeah.
Continue.
I do not think it was the RAV4. I think the RAV4 is still stashed. Ryan has another car. I don't know what it is, but the RAV4, driving the RAV4 around with its plates at this point in time is dangerous.
Certainly.
Okay.
Could it be the Jeep, though?
It could be the Jeep. I will say the Jeep, I'm not even sure the Jeep is licensed for on-road. So I've looked at, both the Blahoviak boys have long records. And some of the things is that, like, keeping a driver's license is almost impossible for them. So a lot of their police charges, some of them are more serious, but a lot of them are driving without a license. And that might not work the same way in the States as other places, but there's this crazy thing where people drive without a license and then they go to court for a few days and then they get some sort of probationary period where they're allowed to drive to work. And then they just do it again and again and again.
Right.
It's a little too lenient.
Could also be the maroon car mentioned in the chat.
Right. It'd be interesting if somebody has a better. I think Stephen just said it wasn't a police car. It could have been the RAV4. Is that about what you remember? And in my reconstruction of things, it makes no sense that it's the RAV4. I don't think he would use that as his wheels conveniently, knowing that it's been reported missing. Okay, and so this is where this is also the trip where Zellner thinks blood was stolen from the sink. Right. So I'm showing the reenactment here. If you pull up the picture on the right, this was. So when we first got this photo, I think the first time I've had access to it was on StephenAveryCase.org. And you couldn't see that these were evidence stickers on this.
Okay.
And now more recently, we got a version of this photo where you can clearly see that there's 3 evidence stickers on here. So one thing is, these do show up in the DNA reports. 2 of them did come back positive for Stephen's blood, but for some reason, these guys didn't take any before photos. I mean, what do? You're picking up blood samples off a sink. You put down, these are even, they got scales on them, so you can see the size of the blood spots. And the only photos they release are after they cleaned the fucking stuff up. Excuse me.
SOP.
I'm sorry. So I just don't believe it. There are photos of those blood spots on there, and we haven't FOIA'd the right magic code. But I will tell you, I mean, the police have. I think those photos would help Zellner's story a lot to be able to show people blood on that sink. And we know it. We know it was there. There's the evidence, and also we know it from the DNA reports. But this isn't as compelling as seeing blood on the sink.
Right.
Also, if the blood spots were pretty large, which I don't think is necessary to still continue the case, it is strongly compelling. Okay. And I will watch myself. Gorilla's no better than that. Okay. Okay, so that was on the 3rd. The next thing is going to be the planting of the RAV4. Now, we had a break this week that somebody who's known about this for a while, we've received these dispatch calls, and I guess all the phone calls from Avery, and they're long and tedious. And somebody tipped me to the one that had this sighting of the RAV4 midway between Shackton and Hilbert. And that was the morning of November 4th. So on my current working theory timeline, I have the RAV4 being planted the early morning of November 4th. This is when the Jeep and the RAV4 come together and Wilmer sees him. So he would be seeing them working in his yard the morning of November 4th. Based on his testimony, I think he saw them in the daytime. It seems like nobody asks enough questions ever, but his affidavit is very sparse, and his article was a little bit more full than the affidavit, really, which is probably by design for some reason, to make it difficult to cross him in the future. So if you pull this up, this was the big finding of the week. This isn't how it started. Pull up the satellite photo. So click on the one on the left. Okay, so this started out, I guess, I'm working with, we talked about it last time. It's Petrichor Girl.
Oh yeah,
Mystic Jinx, Wigaholic C, and Emerging Truth on this. Okay, they're all helping me. This was really their lead. They asked me to help them determine if the Jeep they discovered was white. So they had come up with the title papers for Jason Blahoviak purchasing a Jeep CJ5 1977 model in 2002. So it would be 3 years after that purchase we're looking at. So I went to the Gorilla Eye in the Sky and collected a lot of satellite photos of all the Blahoviak related properties and spotted cars in their driveways. And this turns out to be the bingo. Now, when we look here, it looks like, what does it look like? It looks like two black cars, right?
Yep.
Okay, so actually,
Yes.
the first time I looked at it, actually one's a lot bigger than the other.
Mm-hmm.
And I think
Yes.
one's actually only an ATV, I think. But
I was gonna say we're a golf cart, right?
yeah, I didn't analyze it very much, but it's a lot smaller than the. So the one on the left turns out to be a white Jeep. Let's can we zoom on this any or? Yeah.
Let's see here.
Yeah. Let's just go to my analysis slide.
No, I can't. So, all right.
Yeah, it is sort of trouble to. You'd have to like open it in another window and use a browser zoom or something. So go to the one on the right. No, it's there. So this is. Yeah, pull that up.
Trying. There we go.
Okay, so this one we've gotten closer. We zoomed in and we see. Now, actually, I actually knew the black was tarps from another slide. So there's actually a tarp over this vehicle. There's also a big long shadow behind it. So if you go to the other photo real quick. Somebody's telling me it's too long. And if you look behind the house, you see how the shadow is behind the house, or it's actually a garage, but.
Oh, back here.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, there's a shadow on the car just like that. So there's like an extension behind the car that's not part of it.
Yeah, it looks like the car ends right about here.
Actually, you can see the tire on the back of it. So
as you can see, there's a change in color right about there.
And you can you see the spare tire even at this distance? I think you're right on top of it. But you don't see it. Okay. Well, when you look closer, you'll know it's there. So let's go to the slide on the right now. So if we look on the back, you can see there's a spare tire hanging off the back that's offset to the driver's side. Do you see it?
Yeah.
That's the shadow. That's the tire.
Oh, you mean here? This is the tire. Okay, I think I see what you mean. Okay.
Yeah. Now, this Jeep I have here is it actually is a 1977 CJ5. It's a type called a Golden Eagle. Last time we discussed it. Yep. I don't know if we discussed it, but they had a model that comes out with a big Golden Eagle on the hood.
Yeah, right. I remember.
Okay, but this is the exact same model year. So you can see the tire matching up. Now, what we'd expect next would be a roll bar and a back seat.
Right.
And what we see is the white
roll
back
bar.
and the white back seat
Yeah.
underneath the roll bar.
Yeah, there's a white back seat, right? Little white here.
Now, also when this Jeep doesn't have its top on, it has no doors, which is very all right, so first of all, that tire is very characteristic of this Jeep model. That roll bar is very characteristic of this Jeep model. Having a back seat that goes up flush with the back of the car is very characteristic of this Jeep model. There's not a lot of vehicles out there like that. This is a very unique car. Now, you can see the tarp is actually collapsed over the front seat, and you can see under the tarp are the two seats. So the tarp is actually laying on top of the seats. And that's very characteristic of this Jeep model.
Yeah.
Now, one of the big things very characteristic of this Jeep model is, and of Jeeps in general, is its windshield folds forward flush with the top of the car.
Right. Just like the Army Jeeps you see watching MASH, folks. Yeah,
right.
Anyway.
But that's very unique to this car. Actually, I think it was one of the things that turned out to be very unsafe. And one of the Jeep ended up, this model of the Jeep ended up being discontinued because it would flip on its side. And the windshield was it's actually a very unsafe car on road.
Right.
But it's a lot of fun. I mean, you know, and off-road with big knobby wheels, it's a really good time. But that windshield folding forward is extremely characteristic of a Jeep.
Right.
You're not going to tell me this is a Pontiac Fiero or something. All right, now luckily, the tarp has a break in it. We can see through to the hood, and it is white.
Okay, yeah.
And then we can see where the tarp's been shoved forward, and we can see the front bumper. So this is all lining up with the design of this CJ5. It's in Jason Blahoviak's parents' driveway. It has a tarp on it because it's usually stored. I think it's mainly used for off-roading. It's not an everyday car. I hope, or I don't know if I hope or not, it may or may not have license plates. Based on the driving record I saw for these boys, you know, license plates are sort of optional to them. Maybe they stole some plates for that day. Okay. I think that's the white Jeep. I'm very confident it's a white Jeep. Whether it's the right one, I'm feeling more and more confident.
And just remind us again the significance of the big was it a golden eagle on the bonnet?
Yeah, well, right.
Thomas says that he saw a lot of rust on the bonnet.
Rust or peeling.
Yeah.
And these decals. So I found out that when the decal is put on by the manufacturer or the dealer, they put clear coat over the top of it so that it won't peel.
Right.
But if you do it aftermarket, a lot of people don't put clear coat on because it takes a lot of effort.
Mm-hmm.
And then
plus the clear coat stuff is pretty toxic. It's better to have a shop and the breathing masks and all that stuff to apply it. But anyway.
Yeah, but these guys are not swimming in money.
Yeah, right. That's what. Yeah, right.
Yeah. But we're talking about a 25-year-old vehicle, aren't we?
It was 18 then, so it's 77.
Yeah.
So it's a very old vehicle that he bought 3 years earlier. I will say that some people have, even now, a 77 Jeep CJ5. It's sort of a collectible.
Right.
And they have them in mint condition, but the people doing that weren't in the same financial shape of these two young men.
Yeah. People like the Ford Bronco 2s as well. Those are pretty popular for off-roading.
Yeah, but for off-roading, this was it was an icon.
This was definitely an icon. The Jeep was the brand. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I grew up with a TV series called Rat Patrol where they just drove Jeeps in the desert of North Africa and shot.
I used to love MacGyver, and he always drove around in one.
Anyway. Yeah. He didn't have machine guns. So.
No, he didn't. He didn't like guns. So
yeah. Well, that's actually a good thing.
I just thought I'd let everybody know we're at 110 minutes, so looking to keep it around 130. Just FYI.
No, dude. We're now coming up to
17
17
minutes.
minutes.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's 1 hour 10.
There are
Sorry,
only
I said 110 minutes. I meant an
60
hour
minutes
and 10
in an
minutes.
hour. Yeah.
I meant an hour and 10 minutes. Yes, thank you for busting my balls. So there we go. Hour and 10 minutes we are at, and an hour and 30 minutes is what I'm looking for as the goal. Just wanted to say that, anyways. Thanks. But hey, everybody have a good laugh.
We have stuff
Rule
for
and
2
Paul
days.
bust my balls. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Sorry.
But we have stuff for 2 days, you know.
Yeah.
Hey, I'm down. I'm down to continue this on
I'm
like
not
Wednesday
saying-
night, where we all get together on Wednesday night. So
Yeah,
that'd
I'm
be
not saying
perfectly
two
fine.
90-minute presentations. I mean like 48 hours of stuff here.
Yeah. Well, I'll have you on for Mammothon.
Okay.
Just do it again, man.
I watched that Dan Magilla's presentation for 2 whole days. I don't remember any of it. I'm so sleep deprived. Yeah, because I mean, it's really getting you to see and understand more than our entertaining. But I hope we keep
Right.
you a little
Well, yeah.
entertained. Okay, so
Sometimes the fun and entertainment makes it all a little easier to digest too. So
this next thing, so we've got the white Jeep and the RAV4 are, I think, stashed in Shiocton. I think the RAV4 is stashed near that Jeep. The satellite photo of the parents' house showed a big wooded area next to the house that's now become a big mud area that they look like they do dirt biking on. And I think it would have been an easy place to hide the Jeep so it wasn't visible from the road, and the family probably wouldn't have cared or even known.
For the rest. Yeah.
For the RAV. So they're both sitting there, I think, in Shiocton. So this is the sighting. So you can see we got RAV4 sighting written down. Somebody doesn't know how to spell sighting, but this
Right.
is the Calumet dispatch recording. I don't have
Right.
the link handy right here, but in the bigger presentation I have it. There's a link to go to the recording. It's skewed here, so you can see the time you're supposed to go to. It's 46:19 out of 55:45. So
right.
if you don't know where to go to, you're going to be waiting a long time to get to it.
Yeah.
But it's important. So the words he uses is that he sees it on Highway 15 between Greenville and Appleton, headed into Appleton. So pull up the map. The map will expand. All right, so what I've done is I've drawn a route from Shiocton to Hilbert. From Hilbert, you could follow the route Teresa normally takes to get home from the Averys. So what you can see is it's fairly direct to pass through Greenville, go on Highway 15, which is the segment that goes on a diagonal briefly there and then go straight. Okay. And then go down through Appleton. Appleton, you got to catch a bridge. So there's that bridge there. There's also a bridge a little southwest of that she might have took. Or I don't know why I'm saying she. So this would be who I've been calling Private White Jeep, who is, it might be she, it might be Tara, it might be Chad, it might be someone else and it's just their Jeep. And the spotting is between those two early in the morning. Unfortunately, there wasn't enough follow-up to even ask the guy what time it was. And it's really infuriating to listen to this because the dispatch woman, all she wants to do is send him to voicemail for Wiegert and then call Wiegert and tell him it happened and like get it off her table as fast as possible. And then we never hear the recording that Wiegert got. Wiegert never writes anything in a report. But this is a very suspicious location. I'm sure they assumed it was a bad report because it wasn't where they wanted it to be. But with this theory of the case, it's exactly pointing to a place intermediate between Shiocton and the salvage yard on a road that'd be familiar to somebody who lived in Hilbert. Okay?
Okay.
All right.
So we move on. All right, so now we've said it's the 4th, it's early morning. We're arriving, and we've been looking at our Mapstrosity, and we know where we want to go. We visited Cuss Road on the 3rd. This time we're going to drive in past Wilmer Siebert. So let's scroll up a little bit on that map. So they're going to come in on Jamba Creek Road from the north. So they're coming from 147, turn on Jamba Creek, and then they're going to make a right onto the access road to the Redonk Quarry past Wilmer's house. So Wilmer's house is number C there. There's a circle around Wilmer's house. I think that actually comes from the search party on the 7th. I don't think that circle was when they were planning it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think they might have parked their car in box B on the 7th. But for this one, what they do is they drive their car in. I think what happens is they stash the Jeep. There's a little road in the trees. They stash their Jeep out of sight. In that road, I think the driver of the Jeep gets out, gets in the RAV4 with Ryan, and they continue down that back road to Conveyor Road. And then they go in and plant the Jeep. And then if you, is that all it does? Did you click on it?
Oh, sorry.
Not yet.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot more of this.
My bad. Sorry.
Okay, so they come in past Wilmer together. They stash the Jeep at A. They get in the RAV4, and then they go up the Conveyor Road, plant the Jeep, and then they're both together at the Jeep. They camouflage it maybe, and then they might even plant blood. And then when they're done, there's, I think Loof's finding 2 different trails away from that spot. So I think there were 2 people there, consistent with Wilmer's statement. They don't seem to walk exactly the same. Remember that those dog tracks are higher fidelity than you're thinking. And they both end up crossing again back here at, guess what, at the Jeep. And then I think they leave. I put this on the morning of the 4th. I personally think we have photographic evidence that the RAV was there at 3 o'clock on the 4th. So it was prior to that. The spotting of the license plate also puts the license plate in Ryan's possession at this time. Mm-hmm. It eventually gets found on the property. So they drove it with license plates because somebody spotted the license plate. Also, not having license plates would be suspicious. So I think this is happening the morning of the 4th. Okay? Okay. This is the slider. I'm talking about the planting of the RAV4. So if we pull up the track first, the picture on the right. Yeah. Okay, so what I think is the part that shows the planting, the Loof track that shows the planting is, I call this the southern part of the Loof track. The northern part is actually the bone planting. And I think they came up the Conveyor Road, they turn right, and they go down to the pond. And there's a track, a Loof track that follows that path. Now, Loof doesn't show them looping around the pond with the RAV and parking it with headed west. But it's possible that happened. It's possible Loof's right, and they somehow turned it around after driving there. Now, my theory is they parked it on the perimeter so that they could come back and tell somebody else that they found it doing a search without trespassing.
Mm-hmm.
So they're purposely parking it on the perimeter. I think that's a big part of their plan.
Yeah.
Okay, so close that. We have one other big piece of evidence that comes in here, is the turn signal light. So this is the one that Ryan says had been broken for a long time, and she decided to. I mean, the story tells sounds like him, not like Teresa. She decided to make a claim and not bother repairing it and pocket the money. Right? It's like that's not what Teresa would do. That might be what Ryan would do. So let's pull up let's look at that. I think it's clean in there. Now, if you have that turn signal punched out and you drive very long,
You get a lot of carbon and dust and grimy buildup.
yeah, I think it's clean in there. So the car wasn't driven very far after breaking the turn signal. We probably have to, find somebody who's a PhD in broken cars to testify about it. But it's pretty obvious, right? That's pretty clean. That electric tape on that wire bundle looks clean.
Yeah.
The light looks pretty clean itself. One other thing we got this week, I think I shared it with Roel, was we got a picture of the back of that light. I didn't figure anything out from it, but it's just another evidence photo.
Yeah.
The back of the light looks sort of dirty, so and that dirt may be instructive since it was back in the back of that hold with who knows what. I don't think it got dirty being in the turn signal slot. Okay, another reason that they don't want Zellner to have it.
Absolutely.
It's a very important piece of evidence. Certainly.
Yes. So here, I just want to go through. I think at 3 o'clock, we do spot on one frame of the flyover video from the airplane. We spot one frame where the RAV4 is. I've shown this to a lot of people, and for some reason, not everybody sees it. I thought it might be red-green color blindness for a while. So long time ago, I think it was Seeking Truth for Good did this sound analysis, and you can clearly see that there's an airplane section of this video, and then it switches to a helicopter section. All the different noise bands are from the different mechanical rotation rates of the gearbox in the helicopter, where the turboprop only has a single speed. It doesn't have a gearbox. It rotates at the speed of the engine. So now that's not to say they didn't cut this up and splice it. I mean, there might be like micro jumps, but the noise band tells us that first part is the airplane. That is the frame that was extracted using what was it called? Not Clearroom. It's an Adobe tool that let us extract every frame in the video.
But because it's the plane, it's the 4th. The helicopter was on the 5th.
Right, which is important to. And then I have a very detailed post on this on Reddit where I also go through the sundial effects, and I say it's almost exactly 3 o'clock. I think the flight started at 1:30, so it's consistent with the police report.
Yours says it's Adobe Lightroom.
Lightroom, that's right. That's a Clearroom.
Thank you.
I'm thinking Clearcase, which is a bad thing to think about for software developers everywhere. It's a bad tool that's very expensive. Or I've been told, gorillas don't program. Okay, go on. So this is that. One of the things is that I think Seeking Truth for Good did was the download. She did the download, or I did the download in Windows Media Player, and saved it directly to a WMV file instead of saving it as an MP4. I think this allowed us to get a little more of the resolution of the recording. People who are downloading it in MP4 are not getting nearly the same amount of color depth and in their picture. Okay.
Yeah.
And then if you go on, no, there's one more. Yeah, this is the one that actually. So the frame on top is from the 4th. You look closely, you can see the top of the RAV4, TL RAV4, and the back of the Jeep Wagoneer. The bottom slide is from the 5th when the RAV4 is tarped, and it's almost the exact same angle, and you can see the tarped RAV4, and then the bottom you can still make out the red Jeep Wagoneer. There's better ways to look at this. it's surprising, even when I get people to look at it very closely. I think about 50% of them don't see it.
Mm-hmm.
And 50% believe, and 50% are like, I still don't see it. I made a black and white one for people who might not know that they're red-green colorblind, but I'm not sure. Okay. It might not be true, but that's what I'm basing my timeline on. I think it's there on the 4th. All right. Now, before that flyover even ends, we have the suspicious no caller ID phone call starting for Ryan, where he's getting called repeatedly,
Right.
and for short calls from about, I think they start around 3:15 and end around 7:30. Okay, so this is the phone.
4:15 and 7:25. Yep.
Yeah. So, well, the first one's at 3:11 up there. It's the very first line. It just does.
Oh well, yeah. There's that one there. Yeah.
It has no call ID, but it doesn't have the D type.
But
we think
it also has INCL over here. So, whereas
Yeah.
these, anyway. Okay.
Yeah, well, the D type we think is one or two things. We think it's either phone to phone direct, or it's roaming
Okay.
out of network.
All right.
It's hard to know for certain. This has been I mean, people on Reddit have been looking at this, but those are the two current thinkings on it. I don't think Zellner in her filing said that she knew. She just said it was suspicious and that it was likely law enforcement, I think, which... Okay, so go down. Let's go to the next slide. So I think what's going on is Loof track 4. You always have Loof. So let's pull the whole track 4 up. Just click on it. Okay, so this track originally... So the track 3 got stopped because there was all this crazy stuff going on over in the Cuss Road cul-de-sac.
Right.
So I guess they said, well, let's assume Loof would have turned and gone down that road toward the deer camp. And we'll start far enough away that they aren't telling us to stay away. So right at the edge of where they were calling their search zone, Loof starts a track. And Loof finds a trail. Loof circles the deer camp. There's some notes in there that he showed some interest in a few things. I mean, she did. I keep having to remember it's a she. And then she goes to the southeast down that trail and turns and walks back into Redonk Quarry. And then she makes this strange mitten out there. I guess she's a fan of Michigan. No. So that strange mitten, I believe, is where several cars are parked.
Okay.
And then she goes around where the cars would have been parked. And then she picks up another trail that goes to the location of the RAV4. So what I think's happening in here is some cars park back there in the Redonk Quarry that I call it a safe distance. So they didn't want to get too close.
Mm-hmm.
And one person carrying scent walks to the deer camp and back, and one person carrying scent walks to the RAV4 and back. There might have been more people there not carrying scent. So I still think this is a mystery, what exactly was happening. My two scenarios are that Scott and Ryan came together with Mike Halbach. This is my one scenario.
Mm-hmm.
Scott went to the deer camp to be a lookout on Avery, and Mike and Ryan went to the RAV4, where Ryan was telling Mike, we found this when we were searching last night. Look, it's right here. And that's why he left it on the edge of the property. And this is why I think, Mike Halbach acts weird later, is because of this caper. That's one explanation. Now, the reason I think Ryan would do that is he would prefer that the RAV4 location get reported by Mike Halbach than himself. him knowing the location is potentially incriminating. Mike knowing it, especially since he's the victim's brother, he has sort of a suspicion immunity, and I think Ryan might try to push that role of contacting the cops onto him. All right, that's my first theory. Second theory is this is actually they've already contacted law enforcement, and this is them taking law enforcement to the RAV4. In that case, they probably walk to the deer camp and back after going to the RAV4 to see that if they can see Avery's house. Okay?
All right.
You're going to have to cut it off.
I was going to say that's about an hour and a half, but if Paul and Roel have anything they wanted to talk about or ask you or bring up about anything we've gone over here at all?
Well, let me just say that the rest of the slides complete a full timeline through the end of the 8th. All the tracks are accounted for. This is my best current working theory.
Mm-hmm. Well, go ahead and finish it out.
You want to finish it out?
You can if you want.
Okay. So it's not many past there. You did.
Yeah. No problem. Go ahead.
Okay, go back. So where were we? We were just.
You were talking about your two theories, and
that was of November 4th. Right. So now I'm also
we're here.
Right. We're here. So the next slide is just saying, everybody's picking on Mike Halbach for seeming to be keeping a secret with Ryan.
Uh-huh.
So my theory is that Ryan bamboozled him into thinking that he was just out there searching near the yard the night before and found the car and brought Mike with him to see the car. And then Mike contacted the police. Now, the police did a flyover. They looked at the video, but they don't see the video's awful. They know it's awful, but they really haven't examined it that closely. So they don't find that one frame that might have been a case. It would have been hard to make a search warrant on one frame like that, especially with half people not seeing it. So go on. So that's all I'm saying is I think that's what they're hiding, what Halbach's hiding. I don't think it's anything more than that. Now, what happens is I think they contact law enforcement and hatch the plan to send Pam Sturm there so that they can say they know where the RAV4 is. We all know they knew where the RAV4 was before she goes.
Right.
So I think
that's pretty obvious, yeah.
Yeah. So we go on, and she's led by the Holy Spirit here. So I'm doing a dove.
The hand of God. Yes.
The hand of God descends in the shape of a dove and leads Pam of God from the front of the salvage yard back to the RAV4 almost directly. Okay. Because who would want to look at all those cars when we can just go to where we're supposed to?
God could just lead us there in less than 20 minutes. I mean, hey. Okay. I'm not saying anything negative about God, folks. I'm just saying she didn't need God to point it out to her. Like I said,
he's got more important things to worry about than.
Right. And plus, we're all humans, right? We all end up noticing the thing that looks out of place or different. Mm-hmm. And that RAV4 being double parked up on that ridge the wrong way compared to all the other cars. I mean, there's with stuff stacked all over it when no other car had stuff stacked all over it. It was going to stick out like a sore thumb and grab attention. God was just not needed. So anyway, sorry. Go ahead, Magilla.
Okay, so that was the 4th. Well, that was the 5th. So Pam goes there the 5th, and then the law enforcement takes over the property on the 5th, and I think Ryan returns on the 7th. So on the 7th, I actually have several things happen. I think he brings back the cremains on the 7th. So I think he had them buried somewhere near Shiocton. God only knows where. Mm-hmm. He dug them up. He had them buried with a lot of dirt. He took the dirt and the bones back in buckets. He might have been using the dirt to disguise what they were. He might have even had plants in it. Who knows? So if he got stopped, he had a story.
Right.
He's not driving the RAV4, and he's carrying buckets of what look like dirt. So I don't see him driving back here with police around with a body in his car. People are accusing me of thinking that. My timeline is he's bringing back dirt with the cremains in it.
Right. What looks like mud to anybody else, basically.
Right,
So.
and he's got some reason for it to be mud because he's carrying plants or something or a tree.
Right.
I mean, we plant trees all the time in Wisconsin. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's just something we do. They always die, but.
Well, I imagine you probably get a lot of sick trees being there. So many.
So he went on. So we know from his testimony, he marked up that map saying that they were searching the field north of the yard. This was his opportunity to plant the license plates. I think he put the license plates in the station wagon on the 7th when he's with the search team north of the yard.
On the 7th, okay.
Okay. Now, I also think on the 7th that he tried to go to Cuss Road. He had been to Cuss Road and successfully planted the electronics. I think he took the cremains to Cuss Road on the 7th before the big to-do, and the place, basically thinking about walking down there to the house, he could see that the place was crawling with cops, and then he decided to abort. Now, the reason I think he did that, we know from when he planted the electronics that we already have Teresa's or the scent article sent up there to explain the scent dog, but we don't explain the cadaver dog alerts. So I think what happened was he was going to go there to plant, but on the 7th, the 5th and 6th, the place was just crawling with cops, and the 7th, it's still crawling with cops. I think he could see that from Cuss Road. This is before the discovery of that pile. And I think the dog alert is because he brought the cremains here. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I think when he got scared out of Cuss Road is when he brought the cremains somewhere else and was going to plant them later.
Right.
So my guess is that's when the county quarry started being part of the game. Only after he got scared out of Cuss Road. So the 7th, he does go and join the search party. I think he plants the license plates. Foghaze did a really good post identifying that happening. And then the 8th. So now we're between midnight on the 7th and sunrise on the 8th that he does the bone planting. So Cuss Road is still all cordoned off.
Right.
Got to stay away from it. So he sneaks down. I think there's a patrolman near the burn barrel in front of the house.
Just a question. I think the map is upside down here.
I believe so.
The south on top and the north on.
So here's Steven's trailer here.
Yeah.
And here is the deer camp over here.
Yeah.
And
so
folks,
in case
that trail
people got confused, it's
and so the trail I was talking to Magilla about in the beginning that he had brought my attention to is this one here, because it appeared on the 8th suddenly, and it was very strong.
Yeah, there's
2 different dogs went for it.
Right, and that scent pool there where they're walking back and forth, they call that in the literature a scent pool. That's probably somewhere where a scent carrier stayed a while.
They were building up their courage to try to come up here behind Steven's trailer because they knew there was a cop car or there was somebody over here that might report seeing them. And so they were afraid maybe. So they were back here building up their courage to come and bring up a dead girl's bones and try to throw them in Mr. Avery's burn pit. I'm sure it was a stressful time for them.
Yeah, and we also know that some were spilled on that path. So not exactly where, because we had such a crack forensic team, but there is admissions by them that some of the bones were not in the pit, that they were strewn on the lawn. So that makes it sound like he probably spilled some, or maybe after he dumped the primary amount out in the pit, running back, he saw some stuck in the bottom of the bucket, and he just dumped it out on the lawn so he didn't have any on him. I have one theory that there may be a bucket up by the deer camp where he stashed the bucket he used.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, we talked about that a long time. Now that the other thing is, Serafowski's satellite photo is not really the day of the 7th, but this flyover photo from a helicopter with a stable camera. Has anybody actually heard of one of those?
So that zigzagging would have been right here, right?
I don't think so. I think it's more.
Well, here's Steven's trailer.
Yeah, I think the zigzagging is not that close to the back. It's right.
You think it's here?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think the corner of that lot is sort of where I think he's peeking in from. From the it's actually the southwest corner, but it looks like the top right corner of Avery's lot. I think it's where he's keeping an eye on that burn pit. I think he already decided after casing the place on the 3rd where to put it.
Right.
Okay, so I'm not sure what day this picture was taken, but that's where he put it. I have heard in the police reports them refer to an ash pile, and I don't think a cremation fire would leave an ash pile. Ash pile sounds like somebody dumped a bucket out, right? And there's a pile of ash. So, of course, they purposely didn't photograph anything.
Well, yeah.
Okay, but
another reason why they didn't follow SOP, and it makes them suspect.
Now, when I put this one together, I said Ertl refused to photograph. I'm not sure I have Ertl right. Does anybody remember exactly who it was? It was a DCI guy?
Yes, it was Ertl.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's good, because, Twitter doesn't let you edit these damn things. Anybody ever got pissed off about that before?
Yes, I know, right?
Yeah.
Very frustrating.
But,
delete the tweet and start over.
It's like, that's actually part of their master scaling design, is to have immutable data. They write articles about how that kept them from that allows them to cache data at lots of places. But the other thing it does is it causes,
frustrates us.
It frustrates all the users. I mean, who would ever want to correct anything they wrote? I mean,
yeah, gosh. Nobody ever. We're all perfect, so why would we need that?
Yeah, I get it right first time. I don't see what.
It's just get over yourself. You make mistakes, and people know now. Okay. So, all right. So the next slide, we're flying through here a little bit, but most of this is not. It's just the timeline. That's new. Now this is Loof Track 7. I think Loof Track 7 is after planting the bones. Here, I think the car, because the police are all around, I think the car is actually parked right at the entrance of Redon Quarry, which is real close to the track number sticker. So there's that one strange loop right at the entrance. Yeah, there.
Yeah, here.
I think that's where the car is, and I think he's walking on foot to do this, and I think he's doing that so that he can be more stealth, and maybe he can just say he's part of the search party if he gets caught.
All right.
I think he's carrying at most 1 or 2 buckets. He's not carrying everything, and I think so. So this is how he gets. This is the path back, but I think he walked the same path in.
Right.
He gets in there, and also Loof shows that he drove south, which is in the direction of the county quarry. Okay, so when we look, so this is the box that held the majority of the cremains found at
Stephen's
burn pit. This would easily fit in one bucket.
Yeah.
And there might have been a lot of debris or ash in with it, but of course that was sifted out by gorillas. And who don't believe in photographs. All right. So we go down. Gorillas are good for breaking things, so I'll tell you that.
Yeah.
All right. This is just showing where down in the county quarry these evidence piles were. Now, this is what was interesting. So this isn't actually my map, and did I credit? Yeah. This, unfortunately, the person who put this together, Nick, called themselves Schmuck Next Door.
Oh, dude, I've seen so many incredibly funny Reddit names.
But this was a nice map, so
You missed out on Ho's Got to Eat too, Magilla.
Oh no, or I don't know. It's a he.
Well, actually, you haven't because he's TikTok Manitowoc.
Yeah.
But
we shared a lot of messaging back then, especially he had the bullet hole on the RAV4, and he had the. It was all good.
Right on.
Yeah. It was good fodder for a week or two. I hope this is more serious than that, but though at the time, at first we didn't know if it was serious or not.
Right.
It was good looking at evidence. So
right.
the big thing here is look at all these evidence tags, and my impression was that they were strewn all over. But if you actually check the geotags, an awful lot of them had the same geotags.
I see.
Okay, so if we go now, because this week we get pictures of where those things came from. Okay, so that was the, this is just the summary. So if you bring up the map with all the tags, we've gone through everything. We've gone through the timeline.
Yeah.
So on the 3rd, Stephen sees taillights. I think Ryan went to Cuss Road with a car and went down and planted the electronics and stole the blood. Would be the defense's theory. On 11/4, we have the witness showing that the RAV4 was on the roll. We found the white Jeep also in Shiocton. I think they plant the RAV4 by driving by Wilmer's house in the morning on the 4th. They get it planted, and then they leave by jumping over that berm, going back to the Jeep and going out. Later that night, Ryan comes back, maybe with Scott and Mike was my one theory, or maybe with Scott, Mike, and law enforcement. And they take an excursion to the RAV4, say, see, it's there. I found it on the 3rd when I was searching around here being sort of risky. And then the other leg is they walk up to the deer camp where they can see Stephen's house. My theory is somebody was a lookout on Stephen's house calling on the phone to the people that were messing with the RAV4. I don't think it was actually headlights. I think it was flashlights that Chucky saw. But when he was leaving to go up north. From the 4th, we go to the 7th. It's not a Loof track, but that's when Ryan comes back with the cremains. He stashes the license plates in the station wagon and keeps, I think he took an excursion to Cuss Road with the cremains, which is why the cadaver dogs alert there. Then early morning, the 8th, he plants the bones and then takes the remainder of the cremains down to the Redont Quarry and dumps them out. Okay, so that's my current working case. Hooray for Loof and Sarah. To me, that's very important evidence, and if you don't understand it, I recommend you do. I think I just have a little summary of Loof science at the end of this, if people are just watching this.
Oh, okay.
So we can go through the slides real fast because I've
we could allow Roel and Paul to have a chance to talk and know about the whole entire thing. I said, we can get back together Wednesday night. Are you available Wednesday night, Roel? At our nighttime, is that good for you?
Yeah, might be. If late enough, I will be available. No
I do think there is the new materials on the bottom. If anybody wants to go,
yeah. Oh, I'm sure you're going to be digging more up by Wednesday. I'm sure we'll be adding to it. So we'll see how much we get through on Wednesday.
Okay.
We'll keep at it.
I have a question about
Okay.
the bone planting. Do you have a theory as to how some bones got into the burn barrel of Yanda?
Okay, so that one's still that's the thing that's still inculpating of Bobby and doesn't seem to fit with Ryan. I will say it was the second time through the materials at the processing site, and the materials were found on the tarp, which was someplace where the material that went through the sieve tray the first time was stored. I'm beginning to think more and more that the barrels got mixed up, and the buckets too, at the processing plant before they did the research. I don't.
Yeah, because the barrel was already searched and they found nothing the first time, and it was found the second time, and maybe they just mixed up the tarp and the barrel.
They had a sieve tray or some sort of filter tray, and they were passing it through, and they were only examining the things that didn't go through. I don't know, maybe it was a 1-inch square cut. I don't really know what they were using. But then they went back supposedly and looked at what fell on the tarp through the sieve tray. But that was out in the open at that processing site for days. I think it's discovered on the 12th. And I think other people who were processing might have dumped their material that went through the tray together. I think they lost control of chain of custody there. That's one theory. The other theory is Ryan might have had an excursion over there. I don't see why he would. The only excursion he does before the police are there is on the 3rd, and I don't think he had the cremate. So that is actually against this theory. And this theory would have to probably say that it's actually a mistake. The Bobby theory, of course, would build heavily on it. With Bobby, I think it would have been material that he accidentally left in his truck that he wanted to get out of it, goes, hides it in the garbage. The rest of the material in there, I think, is just the family's garbage.
Right. And animal bones.
Yeah, well,
actual animal bones.
But yeah, anyway. Chicken bones, yeah. Or robin bones, or blue jays. We eat everything back there.
Right.
I saw some comments in the chat, people like being disappointed that law enforcement never planted anything. Well, we can...
no, they did.
They can rest assured that some things were really planted by law enforcement. Yeah, well, just in your theory, it's not the RAF, not the blood, and not the electronics.
And not the license plate.
And not license plate, but there's enough left. There's a key, there's a bullet,
and the key are awful, and the hood latch DNA, and I got presentations on that. So that's one of the reasons why they're covering it up, is because they're involved in it. But this is about the 3rd version of this. I've moved the events around to reconcile everything. If anybody finds something wrong, we'll just update it if it can be. If you find something that disproves it, that'd be great too. I just don't see really how to fit the Loof track data in with the Bobby theory at all.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. All right. Fair enough.
And I've actually been hit with an argument like, well, somebody will think of something. It's like, well, I've been thinking about it a long time.
Yeah. But sometimes people do things occur a different way to people, and suddenly new lines of...
Yep, that's it. Figuring out what those tracks meant is... but how somebody can selectively lay down tracks part of the time.
Right, yeah. That would be difficult to do.
He was walking around other places. He's got 2 pairs of shoes. One he only wears when he's planting evidence,
So basically, when I was in touch with the likes of Herman and Wiegert, one of the things that they constantly told me was that it was a quality investigation that they did. That they had 100% trust in the integrity. I think we can clearly see that you have dug incredibly deeply into this. Well, not just Magilla, but obviously the dude and Roel. So has
many others.
And
Many others.
Absolutely, absolutely. But you're the three that's on the screen, so you're the three that'll answer this question.
Yep, but we just wanted to give them their.
And we have researchers in the chat. Thank you very much.
If I ever get to ask the question, that is.
Sure.
Okie
The
dokie.
floor is yours.
Thank you. I just wanted to ask, has there ever at any time been anything that's ever suggested that it could have something to do with Stephen Avery and Brendan Dassey? Has there ever been any bit of evidence that anybody has come up with and you thought, that kind of points towards Steve? I haven't.
Nothing. It all ends up being mud in the face of the state, time and time again.
Well, I mean, there's evidence against Steve that was presented at trial.
Well,
I think the argument was incoherent, but I think you could construct a working theory for Steve. I think a lot of the evidence would tend to disprove it, but there is evidence that would tend to make him a suspect.
Yeah, I've never denied that. And Stephen's biggest problem is going to be the blood. Everything else, people can easily understand how it could have been moved and that sort of stuff. It's the blood that people have the trouble figuring that out and getting to grips with how it could have been in the RAV4, and that's the one that's the biggest hurdle for Stephen, in my opinion.
Well, I actually think if we show a strong case that it was somebody else and they planted all this other stuff, that if somebody thinks the blood wasn't planted, I think there are good arguments that the blood was planted. I mean,
I do too.
When it looks like it was planted, it's on a Q-tip. It only lies on an arc path from the rear passenger door.
And we have crusts of blood.
Yes, we have crust, which means it was dropped after it dried from something. And there's no blood where his hand would have operated the mid lever. We know when he was in the other car, that's where the blood was.
Right.
I think she has good arguments, but we could use another break there. But I don't see a way to not argue his innocence at this point.
Okay, I've got a couple of final things then. What was really funny, an observation I made today, as I was driving up towards Edinburgh, I saw a maroon Dodge minivan. You never ever see them in the UK. Why did that stand out to me? A maroon Dodge minivan. I mean, Dodges are so rare in the UK. I thought, my goodness, that was really strange.
Yeah.
Of course, the reason it struck me was Making a Murderer. But yes, it was a common. Yeah, exactly.
Was it for sale?
Sorry?
Was it for sale?
No, it was actually moving along the road.
Oh.
But also, Linda made a comment about the fact that Magilla, you're a top-notch investigator. I would just like to add that you're probably a top sciatic-notch investigator.
A greater sciatic notch.
That's the word I'm looking for.
That's episode 2. So So
right.
There's a lot more here. I'm sorry I'm hogging all the time.
No worries.
We don't have to.
We'll start it out with Roel on Wednesday.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
So
Right.
all right. I want to say goodbye to everybody. I want to give everybody everybody right now, I got a premiere coming up in about 25 minutes on this channel as well. It's a those of you know I've been looking into Scottish independence. In looking into that, I've come across a true crime issue that I think everybody might find interesting. So stay tuned for that premiere to my channel here. Give that a look. Thank you, you guys, for being here. It's been another fascinating live. Everybody's been very, very intrigued at what's going on. We've had over 110 people watching concurrently for the last probably 45 minutes to an hour. And so it's been a real good time. So we'll plan for Wednesday. Is that good for everybody? Wednesday night? That's going to be, well, we'll discuss that right now, but that's going to be for me Pacific time, probably around, what's too late for you, Magilla? And then I got to account for that being Central.
Well, I'm just 2 hours earlier.
You're 2 hours later than I am. So what would be too late for you?
Well, 3 a.m. my time would be sort of bad.
So, okay, fine. Then I'm going to say 7 o'clock Wednesday Pacific time.
Okay,
That'll be 9 Central. And then Roel and Paul, let me know if that works for you guys.
9, so it'd be 10. So it'd be like 6 in the morning for them.
Ooh,
that's
fairly late.
You want to do it later? Because I can do it later too.
Is it later?
We can go at like, I can go at like 9 my time, which would be 11 for Magilla, which would be like 8 for you guys.
I don't think I can make that. For me, earlier is better, actually. But
you mean if we can do it earlier on Wednesday? You mean? Right.
Yeah.
If I wasn't at work, we could.
Yeah, you're pushing that into Thursday.
Okay. Maybe we'll discuss the time after the show.
Yeah, I'm working out of my office this week, so I'm pretty open. But
all right.
But
we'll see. Maybe I'll get lucky and I'll have a real early day on Wednesday, and we'll see what we can do.
I must admit, I don't think your maths quite added up then, to tell you the truth.
Oh, is that so?
I think 9 o'clock in Central Time is my 3 o'clock in the morning, so that would be Roel's 4 o'clock in the morning.
Okay. Oh, well, that sounds better.
Yeah, it's a bit late for me. If we can do it 1 hour earlier, I think I can make it.
So if you want, if instead of at my 9, we did it at 8. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
No, that's 9 Central. That's what he just calculated.
That's your 6, I think.
Okay, 6. So my 6. Okay, so if we can plan it for my 6 o'clock, got it. All right.
And my 7
folks. Stay tuned for
o'clock.
my premiere on my channel coming up here in just another 20 minutes. Like I said, another true crime kind of thing. Maybe we can dig our teeth into. It involves MI5, so that might be another interesting aspect for some of you to want to dig into it. So give it a look. We'll see you guys Wednesday in some way, shape, or form. Some of us will be here Wednesday, and if not, we'll be also back again next Sunday. So you can count on us. All right, guys, if you haven't already, please hit subscribe and say goodbye, guys.
Bye.
Bye, guys and ladies.
Oh.
And gorillas.
Yes. And
dogs.